63. 发汗后, after a sweat. Oh, here he goes again. We had a whole bunch of purge, then sweat, purge, then sweat, purge, then sweat. Now we have 2 in a row after the sweat. And remember that ho character means we're dealing with the sequela, the post-sweat. It doesn't mean you sweat them and it's right away. This is something they've got now. So 发汗后, after the sweat. 不可更行归之汤. You cannot again give them, continually give them 归之汤. 汗出而传, 无大热者. If the sweat comes out and they have shortness of breath and there is no great heat, 无大热, no big heat, 可与麻黄、杏仁、甘草、石膏汤煮之. Then you could use 麻黄、杏仁、甘草、石膏汤 to treat it. We've had so many lines that have said, you did something, you sweat them, and it wasn't all the way, so you give them 归之汤 again. And then he's saying you can't keep sweating them. What's important is they have to have symptoms that tell you you shouldn't sweat them. If you sweat them and they didn't get better and they still have symptoms that allow you to sweat, you can continue to sweat. Now, what they're doing here is we had 62, we sweat, and then afterwards the body had pain. We're going to think ma huang, but the pulse is deep. And what do? We sweat them again. But we are protecting the yin, and protecting the post-heaven there with the more bai shao, with the ren shun, etc. But we do sweat here. And then here he says, don't sweat. And so again, be clear when not. And in this situation, because remember we're doing a bedside vigil with Guizhi Tang, right? And you give it to them, they have the sweat, and then you stop giving to them and you hope they got better. And then if half a day later the heat comes back and it fits, you give them a sweat again, right? But here he's saying, just don't keep giving it to them. Don't sweat them, right? Han Chu Er Chuan, if you sweat them and they end up with shortness of breath, but there is no great sign of heat, Wu Da Re Zhe, you can give them Ma Huang, Xing Ren, Gan Cao, Shi Gao Tang as your formula. And we notice that if we're going to say it's a Ma Huang formula, the herb that's missing is Guizhi. And then remember that the herb that forces the sweat out of the body in Ma Huang Tang is Guizhi, not Ma Huang. So we need to move something around. We're going to need to stimulate the yang, but we don't want the yang to go up and out. So we're modifying our formula and we're getting rid of that which gives the Ma Huang a direction out. Which gives me a quick pause out, because this formula right here is a favorite formula of Dr. Li in Beijing, of his teacher, and the variations of Ma Huang that do not include Guizhi. They use them a lot. And watching over the years the amount of dosages and successes he has with Ma Huang in a formula and what he does with Ma Huang and Shi Gao, I've just come as a habit that I use Ma Huang as a substitute a lot of the time for Fuzi. I mean, if the person is ready to go, Fuzi is a great herb. But for a lot of the great deficiencies, it's just so fashionable right now to throw Fuzi at everything if you're following what's going on in the mainland, this whole Huoshan Pai, this whole fire school. And I use judicious amounts, which means large doses. The judicious there means large, of Ma Huang to kickstart yang in people who don't need Fuzi, but they need the kickstart. And so I'm a big fan of correctly using Ma Huang to stimulate the yang as opposed to Fuzi unless necessary. Honestly, the reason is the prepared Fuzi, the blackened Fuzi we get. I mean, you could take I'm exaggerating, 1.5 pounds, but I've been so ticked off at what we source that I've taken 150 grams, brewed it up and drank it and feel nothing. Now, there's something really wrong if you can take 150 grams of Fuzi and have nothing happen. And then using raw Fuzi, there's very, very specific rules and places you would use raw Fuzi in the Shanghan Lun. And I'm not attached to using raw foods, and therefore I'm not going to figure out, do I need to put in shi with it? Do I need to combine it with sour herbs? Do I need to combine it with zhishi or lowering herbs? Do I need to use it with ganjiang so there's an anchor in the middle as well as the outside? I don't need to figure out how to use fuzhe just to use fuzhe. If I need to do a stimulation, I happen to like ma huang. And I have a very good grasp of how to use it because I spent years watching people use ma huang, ma xing shi gan tang, and ma yi shi gan tang variations. Ma huang xing ren gan cao shi gao, and ma huang xing ren yi ren shi gao formula. Great formulas. If you start thinking about where the exits are, you start realizing how great they are. So, what does Cheng Wu Ji say? Fa han hou. So after a sweat, chuan dang zuo. They have shortness of breath. Wait a minute. Isn't the formula dang zuo guizhi jia hou po xing ren tang? Isn't the formula to give them guizhi with the addition of hou po and xing ren? Because earlier on we had this, right? We had a asthmatic getting an external pernicious, and we use guizhi jia xingzi hou po tang, xing ren and hou po. And then later on, we made somebody asthmatic. We gave someone shortness of breath. If you remember, we had that yin-yang of which causes which. We gave someone shortness of breath, so now they're an asthmatic with this symptom. We give them the same formula. Okay, we have this. We've sweat them. They've got shortness of breath, but they've got no great sign of heat. And we think we're supposed to give them this. That's what he told us, right? 寒出则传语. Because in this situation, if we give them, in a situation where they have shortness of breath, we give them guizhi, hou po, xing ren tang, the sweat comes out and the shortness of breath goes away. Jin han chu er chuan. In today's case, in this situation, the sweat has come out, it's post-sweat, and they have shortness of breath. Wei xie qi yong shen. This time it's actually the pernicious qi is deeply blocked. Guizhi tang bu neng fa san. Guizhi tang is not going to be able to push it out. Gu bu ke geng xing guizhi tang. Thus, it is not possible, we should not again more use guizhi tang. Right? Guizhi tang is a gentle formula. It only works if we have the zhou, get under the blanket, and wait. Okay? So, han chu er chuan, the sweats come out and they have shortness of breath. 有大热, and if there's great heat, 内热其深也. That would be internal qi, heat qi, deep or very, very extensive. Right? But we don't have that. We have 无大热者. This person does not have great heat. 表血比深也. This means the external pernicious is very extensive. So we're going to give them ma huang, xing ren, gan cao, shi gao's tang, yi san qi xie, to disperse the pernicious. So here, we're not going to disperse the pernicious up and out through a sweat, because more sweat, more shortness of breath, possibility of bad results if the pernicious does not go out all the way, because we're going to damage what? The yang. We risk damaging the yin. And if we do that and the pernicious is not cleared all the way, then the pernicious is going to have a field day. We just had those lines, right? We purged too much, we sweated too much, but we got rid of the pernicious, so when their yin-yang recovered, they got better. We purged too much, and we sweated them too much, the yin-yang was depleted, there was still pernicious, and now the pernicious has a field day. Okay? So, here we have this situation, we're going to clear it, but we're not going to clear it as a fight out through sweat. We've removed guizhi from our formula. We've got ma huang at 4 liang, right, which is a larger dose than in ma huang tang itself. We have xing ren, 50 kernels, which is a smaller dose, right? And here he's saying sweet as opposed to bitter. We're using gan cao at 2 liang. And have you guys noticed that tu in Chinese is a common sound? So whenever Julianne and I say the English number 2 with Chinese, we always put a Chinese tone on it. 2 liang, 2 liang. It's like the silliest thing. I've been listening to us say it the whole time. And then we're going to have shi gao, and we're going to have a pretty big dose there, right? So, and then we're going to crush it up, and we're going to put it in cloth, and it's sweet and cold. We're going to wrap it. Here it's crushed and it's in cloth. And somebody asked a question yesterday, I think it was, about the shirgao, or no, it was actually about a patient. But there are times when I will, the shirgao today comes, sometimes it comes as clumps, sometimes it comes as already powder, sometimes it comes in little crystals. I mean, I don't know what's going on with shirgao, that it can come in so many different variations, but it does. And I will, when it comes as a more of a powder, which incidentally, here and out there in the land, if you're buying shirgao in a pharmacy, it's pretty cheap. But if you're noticing that their prices are expensive, you're getting hit with the 5 cents a gram, even though shirgao costs nothing, it's one of the cheapest herbs, you can always buy it on Amazon because it's a critical ingredient in making beer. If you've ever wondered why beer is such a welcome thing on a hot summer day, it's not just that it came from the fridge. It actually is made with shirgao, right? Gypsum. So hop on Amazon and you put in gypsum and you'll come up food-grade gypsum for beer making. And you can buy large bags of it because people make lots of beer. So, just so you know. Ma Huang, Xingren, and then we've got the shirgao. So I will use the shirgao, and if it's powdered, I have my patient decoct the formula, pour it into the cup, and then stir it up, and then drink it. So they're actually eating lots of shirgao. And then if it's in a rock, then it's in a rock, and I will do something else with it. But instead of trying to make my shirgao always be the same, I look and I change according to what I have to take advantage of the situation. As Julianne says, she soaks her ejiao in yellow rice wine. And the yellow rice wine not only tenderizes this very hard ejiao, but then when it goes into the formula, it keeps it from being cloying. So, just flexibility. Have fun. Neijing Yue, what does the Neijing say? Neijing Yue, gan ku ji, if the liver is suffering greatly, then ji shi gan yi huan zhe, then we want to have sweet to relax it. Everyone's thinking, wait, aren't we supposed to have sour? The liver can have many problems, and in this case, it just said anxious, and we want to give it sweet to relax it. Feng qi tong yu gan, the wind qi, the wind pernicious, is going to flow to, connect to the liver. All right? Our biggest problem is when an external wind invasion gets inside the body and then becomes internal wind, creating head symptoms, a lot of that. I have seen Dr. Lee treat long-term Meniere's disease, not in every single one, but in some of the patients, very quickly, within 2 or 3 days, by giving them sweet and a formula, actually this formula, with some additions. Because he said, this was wind from the outside, they still have an external pathogen locked in their body. And we can do anything we want, but if we don't clear the pathogen as well as sweeten or tonify the system, they're going to constantly have it. And so basically, that headache, that nape, all of those things that came with the external invasion, and then the wind comes in and starts hitting the liver, and then it rides the channel up and it never goes away, it's locked in there, then that's Meniere's disease. You end up with the dizziness, the vertigo, all of those things. Now, today's Meniere's disease has specific reasons, and so if you have Meniere-like symptoms, and you can track that, sometimes this formula, I've seen it work, but it doesn't mean you line up 100 Meniere patient and they're all going to get better on this formula. Right? Let's be clear about that. But that's the pathway. The wind goes in from the outside, it stirs the liver. Feng xie wai shen. So this wind pernicious from the outside is very extensive. Gu yi chun gan zhi ji fa zhi ye. And thus we are using a purely sweet formula to expel wind. So, or to stimulate it. Okay, Ma Huang, it's sweet, a little bitter, a little acrid. Xingren, it's sweet, a little bitter in my opinion. Gansao, it's sweet. Shirgao, sweet, acrid. And so they're using this idea of these herbs are going to move, they're going to hit wind, but they're sweet and they're not going to go up, and the Shirgao is going to keep things cool and not let things spread out, and the Xingren is going to give it a direction. Pretty cool. So, we're almost at 7. So, cooking method, quickly. We have our 4 herbs, and we put it in with 7 shungs of water, and then we first boil the ma huang as usual down to 2. We scoop out the thing, we put in the rest of the herbs, we cook it down a bit more, and then 1 fu yi sheng. So then we take it warm, and we take 1 sheng, and then ben yun huang er bei. And you'll see this is huang, and this huang er bei now. As I said, one of the reasons why there's so many different measurements, I mean, a huang er bei is a drinking vessel said to have started being used in the end of the Warring States period, and there happens to be one in the Suzhou Museum, and it holds 200 cc's. Okay? And so wherever this formula was collected from, the directions were to use a huang er bei. Like, how much should I drink? You drink 1 huang er bei full, because that was the drinking vessel of the time. Everybody was making that shape. And so that's where this formula came from that time period, and that's your directions. To use this particular cup. No, it's not made of special clay that cures your disease. It's a unit of measurement for these people. That's what I love about this book. It's history.